right?
That looks nice.
Sure does.
It is beautiful. It's just stunning. It's
Amazing.
amazing. The colors are soft. The temperature is cool but warm at the same time. It's beautiful. Just the best time of the day. And we've worked on the vineyard. You can see some of the work. There's still, sorry. Yeah, they're in the process of cutting the grass so they can plow it and then till it all by hand.
Great. Mark, shall we start?
Yeah, let's kick it off. Welcome, everyone. If you're able to use your video, it would be nice to see you. If you have Wi-Fi issues, understandable. No worries. My name is Mark Johnston, co-director of Wine and War, documentary that's been in development and in production for the last 7 years. And we are privileged to have our first wine producer on this Zoom, as we're all at home, Naji and Jill from Chateau Belle Vue in Bhamdoun. And introduce you to Mark Ryan, who's in Santa Barbara.
Hello. Hi, I'm Mark. I'm also one of the co-directors on Wine and War. Thank you all for being here. This is our second in a weekly series of discussions we're going to be having with various Lebanese journalists and winemakers and other people sort of either in the film or related to the film. Really briefly, our film will be, well, we'll be releasing it later this year. We're still deciding, like with everything else related to coronavirus, what exactly will happen with it. I know a lot of you have been wondering about that. So with no further ado, we should talk. Mark, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, so Michael is going to be moderating this session. Michael is the author of Wines of Lebanon and a wine critic, wine writer. We will start the Q&A with Michael. We have a little itinerary, but we want to open it up to Q&A for y'all to speak with Naji and Jill. So Michael, take it.
Thank you, Mark. Naji, Jill, lovely to have you here. It's funny, when Mark and I were working on the film, I was also collaborating on the story. When Mark and I were working on the film, we concluded that, you know, the title of the film, Wine and War, if there was one story among lots of stories that really captured that title, it was the story of Chateau Belle Vue. And for the benefit of people here, I'll just, in 1 or 2 sentences, explain. Naji and Jill were living in London. They returned to Lebanon, and when they returned to Lebanon, Naji was hit by an inspiration. He will explain more about that. And they set about healing the wounds of Bhamdoun, where Naji's from, which is a town in Mount Lebanon which suffered a lot during the war. 500 of its inhabitants were killed, and they set about healing the wounds of war by planting vines and making wine that would bring vines and wine that would bring the community together. And I first met Naji and Jill in 2001. That's 19 years ago, and it was still in its embryonic phase, and it's now become a permanent fixture in the Lebanese wine landscape. And first of all, I want to start off with a question for Naji, and Jill can jump in there. What was the real story? What was the real moment of epiphany that made you realize that you wanted to deviate from your successful career as a financier and plant vines to make wine? And how much of a challenge did you see that was, given the fact that presumably you'd never made wine before?
Okay, so I was an investment banker, as you know, and at some point in 1998.
في بعض بطاطا أم هول هن؟ أوكي بس عم بسأل.
somebody's having batata, which means French fries. Well, it's not me, guys. I'm in the vineyards. So 1998, my mom, I got a phone call. My mom called me. She said, get yourself on a plane right away. Your cousin just lost his mom. He's flying from the US. So I met him at Heathrow and we flew back together to Lebanon and put his mom to rest, basically, in the village cemetery. Flew back to London. I'm thinking, gosh, there's something wrong with me. You know, it's all these years, you know, making money, made a small nest egg, but it doesn't make any sense. You know, who's benefiting from that? What, you know, what changes am I bringing to the world around me? Barely seeing my wife, my children. It was not right. And then one day I was, you know, in Milano, a few months after that, in front of the Duomo. It was one of my regular stops, Milano, for business. And I looked at the Duomo, I'm like, all these years, you know, 12 years in London, never, and many years in Milano, many trips to Milano, never saw the Duomo from inside. And I felt drawn to the Duomo. I went inside the Duomo. Within a minute, I was at the altar, looked up, saw the cedar of Lebanon carved on the altar. And I'm not joking, and I had not smoked any hashish back then. It was not legal. And I told myself, wow, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. It was the cedar of Lebanon carved on the altar of the Duomo. And it said on it in Latin, Citus Cedrus de Lebanon, like the cedar of Lebanon. So I took this as a sign, left the Duomo, called my wife, told her, Jill, how about if we leave London and we go back to Lebanon? And, you know, Jill said yes. And we came back to, we moved to Lebanon. End of 99, early 2000, we planted our first vines.
But why wine?
Well, so Michael, so what happened was I came to Lebanon, and the first year I was on my mountain bike, you know, rushing up and down the terraces that used to burn every summer because of the dry Lebanese summer and nothing planted. And I told myself, I gotta do something. I can't just be on a mountain bike hopping around, but I really wanted the freedom and I needed the connectivity with nature. And I did two things: planted my grandfather's vineyard, and also started a software firm. You don't know about that, and very quickly realized that it's not in software. And by the way, my intention was to restore the heritage of Bhamdoun, to replant my grandfather's vineyard, and to employ the locals. I started teaching them, brought them, you know, professors from Lebanon, from a university, but I realized that's not what I wanted to do. I really wanted to plant vines. And why wine? Because this is the heritage of Bhamdoun. Bhamdoun is known all over Lebanon and was the perfect spot where the French set camp in, and basically they used to plant vineyards, plant vines, make wine, make cognac. We have documents going back 200 years to an English missionary called Eli Smith, talking about 600,000 tons of grapes coming from Bhamdoun. If you come here and you see it's all terraces, and you've seen it with your eyes. So why wine? Because I just wanted to restore, you know, the history, the heritage of Bhamdoun, a heritage that was wiped out, that was, you know, in some very dark moments of history, there was nothing left. So they destroyed the vineyards, they burned it all, they uprooted the olive trees, uprooted the vines, and it was a pleasure for me to replant it. So I did that.
Jill, can I come in here and ask you, looking back now, did you actually, I mean, when Naji said, I'm going to plant vines and make wine, what did you think? What do you think was the extent of these aspirations?
You caught me in a moment, because number one, I haven't seen Naji in about 2.5 months. I'm in Minnesota, obviously staying here for a while until this is over. And I've just heard him retell part of our, you know, marital history, which was really pivotal for both of us. And I hear things like that, and I have to admit that it makes me fall in love with him all over again, because I see his passion and his commitment and all the love that he has for this place where he grew up. And he's enveloped me in that. As far as, his commitment to going back and making wine, that was purely logical. I mean, the vineyards were there. They needed to be replanted. The growth could happen again very easily. And it was not a huge transition to take those vineyards and begin making high quality wines with them. All of the fundamentals were there. And most importantly, Naji's ancestors had done all of the groundwork for us. We are standing on their shoulders. We didn't have to do the, research and development aspect of it. We found the vines that were going to be successful in that particular terroir, planted maybe 2,000 to 3,000 vines the first year, saw that it was going to be a big success, and year after year, beyond, as time went on, people approached us to plant their land, and it was like a snowball running down a hill.
But you do make it sound so easy, and to be fair, you've both been very successful. But you make 25,000 bottles a year, I think, of mostly high-end red wines made with in a kind of Bordeaux Rhone style blend, and these wines sell at a premium, not just in Lebanon but abroad. I mean, did you think at the time that you would achieve that kind of success? I mean, what were your expectations?
Our initial business plan, I mean, Naji is in finance, and so this was well thought out, but it's also a project of the heart, and therefore there are some things that are not based in logic or good sense. But we were able to build I think it was an 8-year plan, during which we would be planting, waiting for the growth of the vines, making our first wines, allowing them time to mature before releasing them into the market. And honestly, things happened little by little. We didn't, we went into this project knowing, we're parents, first of all. You look at your 2-year-old and you can imagine what it might be like at age 18, but that's always going to be a surprise. It's the same with planting vines. So the vines our project began very small and went from just a couple of acres of plantation to about 60 acres where we are now. But it happened gradually, and we paid attention to the signs and did our best, with all of the different aspects of involving the village and utilizing what nature gave us.
Okay, I'd like to bring Naji back in.
Okay.
We'll come back to the wines later on. Naji, I remember when we first met, you told me that there was a little bit of skepticism from the people in Bhamdoun, but your natural charm and exuberance of character did win them over. Can you, but there was one guy in particular who heard what you were doing, and he turned up at your front door and said, "I'm with you, whatever you want to do, we can make this happen." Can you tell us about Joseph? Because I know he was a very pivotal figure in the early days of the winery, and some of the legacy of war that you had to overcome in planting some of these vines as well.
Yeah, I mean, so Joseph Khairallah, it's the largest family in Bhamdoun. And by the way, thank you for talking about the charm, but honestly, it's not my charm that I peddled. It was my mother's charm and my family's reputation as the protectors of the land. Actually, I was extremely a bully around here and not a charmer, if I may put it this way. Really sorry to break this mic, but Michael, I had to really fight hard for everything. But look, Joseph showed up one day and said, "Look, I saw you replanting the vineyards, and I want to help you. These are the keys to my shop, and I don't want to work in a shop anymore because it's my dream. I want to replant the vineyards with you." So I looked at him. All right, he looked like a tough guy, and had a beautiful face, and I could see he was genuine. And I inquired about him, and it all added up. And we started replanting together. And at the end of the month, I went to give him a salary like the rest of the employees, and he gave it back to me. So, well, I realized he became the cornerstone. And a few months later, you know, he became the head of the entire viticulture operation, looking after the vineyards. And then he accepted to have a salary. But he was such a genuinely passionate person, in love with Bhamdoun and with the heritage of Bhamdoun. And if you can, Jill, it's been many years now, but if we can just recall that the beginning was all about the mayor calling me saying, look, this guy is selling land and he's not from Bhamdoun, and he bought the land during the war so he can launder money. We got to get this land back to the Bhamdounis. And he would give me the plot number, and I would look at the title, and guess what it says on the title? 5 terraces planted with 65 vines, 2 olive trees, and a fig tree, and a mulberry tree. And I'm like, wow. So that's how it happened. And remember, Jill, and you're like, you're spending our nest eggs buying land in Bhamdoun. But we were really not buying land. We were answering the call, answering the call of heritage, the call of nature. Because this land would have gone to developers that would have destroyed this beautiful nature of Bhamdoun. So that's how we grew little by little. And Joseph was the cornerstone of this. And just a small parenthesis on Joseph. During the war, when the people were kicked out of the village and those who stayed were killed, but those who left stayed in Beirut in a bit of a, very conservative dwellings. Joseph one day woke up and decided to come up to Bhamdoun, and Marie, his wife, Marie, told him, Joseph, where are you going? He said, to Bhamdoun. What are these? These are cherry trees. I want to plant them in my garden. But if they stop you in Bhamdoun, they will kill us. Because the village was occupied, as you know. Well, guess what? They stopped them. And it was a PLO checkpoint in Bhamdoun. And they stopped them. And they asked him what he was doing. He said, look, I want to plant cherry trees in my garden. And if you want to kill me, just come and help me plant them and kill me at the end of the day. So they helped him plant it. And at the end of the day, he went back to Beirut. And 8 years later, or 7 years later, he came up and the cherry trees were big. And he fed his grandchildren, and that was his dream, to feed his grandchildren from his own cherry trees. And that's Joseph. It was just a big heart. And sadly, he passed away 4 years ago. The day he passed away was the last day of the harvest. And he was very frail by then, had a cane, gave me the keys to his tractor and said, I've done my job. Yeah. And he passed away that night.
Wow, Naji, I wanted to ask you, when you were planning your first vineyard, it seemed like, did you say that you had encountered some cluster bombs in the rows?
Well, yeah, I mean, this village absolutely was the site of cluster bombs, because every single war that happened in Lebanon passed through Bhamdoun. So in 1982, the Israelis invaded Lebanon and stopped in Bhamdoun, so it became the front line. So behind those hills was what we called them back then, the leftist forces, the Syrian army leading them. The Israelis used cluster bombs, and we kept discovering them. The second vineyard we planted, my mother's cousin's vineyard, was full of cluster bombs. We didn't realize that until we started planting. Then I remembered that he died in his garden from a cluster bomb. And so we continued planting despite the cluster bomb, because the Lebanese army said it's going to take them 3 weeks to get to us and demine it. So, it's okay. We went through many. If you're supposed to die, you die. one of those situations where we believe in fate, you know, around here. So nobody died, nobody was injured, no cluster bombs went off. And finally the army came and demined it and found another 4 or 5 cluster bombs. And it's really incredible, because you till the land, and we till it with a tractor and with small tiller, and we didn't find cluster bombs. And obviously Jill didn't know about this event until many years later.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's okay.
You've got so many other things to worry about when you're starting a small business, but cluster bombs.
Look, I was 36 at the time, 36 years old, and with a keen desire to replant this village, to restore the heritage. So all these walls that you see around here, okay, I don't know how to turn it. All these walls, this is the heritage. We have about 100 miles of walls built, you know, from stone that they found in the ground when they tilled the vineyards, and they chiseled them and built the walls. This is such a precious heritage, and the Lebanese in general don't know what they have, because it's not their priority to look after the walls when they're trying to figure out how to make a living. So, by the way, look at this beautiful sunset. Look at this. You see it? You see the sunset?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. You also hear the call to prayer. Here we are talking about wine, and we've got a distant mosque. That's the beauty and the charm of making wine in Lebanon. You know, all these civilizations intersect here. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It's great. In a few minutes, people can start drinking wine.
Absolutely, and the sheikh of the mosque will join me.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
I'd like to bring Jill back in, if that's okay. Jill, what we're doing is we're jumping here between the social history and the wine story. What was the first vintage? Can you remind us of the first vintage that you made? What was the blend? How was it made? And what did you feel like when you tasted it? Was it a sense of validation, or was it a sense of surprise? I mean, what did you feel like when you tasted literally the fruits of your labors? Tell us about that first vintage.
So it was an amazingly exciting time. Our first vintage, the harvest, was 2003. And it was a year when, you know, we anticipated making about maybe 6,000 bottles, so 500 cases, something like that. Basically Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon. We tasted them all through, from new wine. At that point, it had been aged in oak for a couple of years. We bottled and prepared it, you know, to be rested for as long as we could before releasing. But we knew there was something there and needed a little bit of validation of, outside of our circle. So we sent that wine off to the UK, to the London Wine and Spirits competition. This was our very first vintage. The blend we were able to send was the Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon La Renaissance. About 5 months later, we got a huge envelope in the mail saying, "Congratulations, you have won gold best in class." And this was a moment that Naji and I will always talk about, because we were speechless for about a day. You know, we knew we'd been doing it for all the right reasons, trying to do everything, you know, with quality in mind, hand crafting, and to have that recognized by the outside world, by a panel of masters of wine, was just awesome. And that was the beginning, where we knew we had something really that could be marketed and valued outside in the world, you know, and that meant that we could elevate the village again along with us to have credibility in the world. So it was a big moment for us.
How did the momentum of enthusiasm that the project has created, how can you describe watching that? I mean, what were the milestones in seeing the people of Bhamdoun get behind you? I mean, was it the first harvest that you did, or what? I mean, what was it? What were the kind of key moments that
Sure.
the people of Bhamdoun realized what was going on here?
Sure. The first harvest was really important because everyone knew we'd been planting for 3 or 4 years, and then to call the village to help us to harvest, it was the first time that people had come together in that way for decades, you know, since the war had finished and beyond. Another pivotal moment was when we transformed an old French embassy property on the edge of the village into a restaurant, you know, event venue, boutique hotel, because at that point we had a place to gather. And it meant that we could do events like live jazz outdoors in the summer. And everybody could come, everyone could participate, wine would be drunk, wine tastings and vineyard tours could start from there. So that was a point where we could put our energy into another vehicle to bring foot traffic back into the village. And at this point, you know, even, marketing that as a touristic destination to the outside world has also become something important. Obviously, we're managing that for the time being with the coronavirus in a different way, and that's become downplayed. But the vineyards and the wine are obviously the heart and soul of what we're doing. But to involve people from the village and give them a chance at livelihood, because all the shops, the other restaurants in the village, everybody's benefiting from the fact that we're there and that we've created, you know, there's a spotlight being shown on Bhamdoun again.
Can I intercept very, very quickly? That first day of harvest was unbelievably beautiful. I was, 5 o'clock in the morning with Joseph in the vineyard, and I'm like, where's everybody? It's like, hold your horses. Nadah al-sawt. I've called the call for help. I've sent the call for help. And we're in the middle of the valley, and people started coming down. So many people, the entire village. Within 3 hours, we had finished the entire harvest, and we had a beautiful party. And people wrote in our golden book some fascinating, from the heart, emanating things about the Renaissance of Bhamdoun, and that's why we named it La Renaissance, by the way. But one in particular strikes a very nice note with me. It says, main unie, Dieu bénit, le vin de vie, which means hands united, God blesses the wine of life. It's really all about life, isn't it? It's about us being able, through wine, to bring people together to enjoy life again and rediscover their heritage.
Well, I certainly remember picking grapes with you in 2005, and it really was a very wonderful experience to see the people of Bhamdoun, as you say, mobilize and come to your vineyards and pick. So yes, no, I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I can vouch for that. I'd like to throw it open to the floor now. Does anyone have any questions for Naji and Jill?
Naji, do you hear me? It's Norbert. That Englishman you mentioned, who was the missionary. What was his name, and what was he doing in Bhamdoun?
His name is Eli Smith. Smith. And this was in the 1810, maybe something like that. He was one of the missionaries. By the way, do you see the fog lower than our vineyards? That's what's so special about here. That's just the fog rising from the med. Rarely gets to the vineyards. It climbs higher than Bhamdoun, but almost leaves the vineyards alone, which keeps it cool and dry. It's lovely. So I don't know what he was doing. I think it was one of his, trips, as they used to do. And Lebanon was one of those places he visited.
And did he set up did he open up a?
No, he just passed through here, and he wrote an entire chapter on his Bhamdouni experience. The wine he drank, the vines, the grapes, all that stuff. The types of grapes, the generosity of the people.
I remember part of the document reading that he noted there were vines in Bhamdoun and around the village, half a mile from top to bottom, from like 900 meters through about 1,300 meters. And it ran 4 kilometers along the mountainside. So from Bhamdoun through the next village over and the next. And it was all vines. Because as Naji showed you, that particular valley is its own special microclimate with very low humidity. And so it's awesome for the growing of grapes.
Hi, Naji. It's May.
May, so nice to hear your voice.
Good to see you. Thanks for the
Nice to
Bhamdoun
see you.
picture. Do you know what they had planted, what grapes they had planted back then?
You anticipated my question.
Yeah. Look, what I can tell you is people talk about 36 indigenous wine varieties in Bhamdoun. Serge Hoshar, God bless his soul, he was a great friend of ours, and he came every single time we harvested and tasted the wines, and always told us, go look for the local varieties and experiment. But you know what? I mean, it's Jill and I. We didn't even have a winemaker until 2006. So we were not going to do it. Maybe now we will start experimenting. We will start doing it. You know?
Yeah. It would be fascinating to find out what those grapes were, those 36.
Yeah. But look, what I can tell you, May, is that even regular grapes like Cabernet or Merlot or Syrah behaves very differently in our terroir. I mean, even the great Serge Hoshar was not able to identify the various wines, when the various juices actually.
I had a similar experience, Naji, so I believe you.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see you again, mate. It's been a long time you haven't been here.
Yeah, soon. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Jill, a quick question about your white wines. Your white wine, sorry. It was a couple of years before you decided to plant your white wine. I think, if memory serves, it's Sauvignon Blanc and Viognier. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Can you tell me a bit of your experience about how the grapes behaved on your side of the mountain, and what kind of what it was like cultivating them, planting them? How did they respond at that altitude?
Yeah, so altitude-wise, our vineyards go up to about 1,250 meters, as you know. And we do have exposition running from southwest all the way around to northeast. And so the bulk of our white grapes are planted on the southwest side. In terms of result, I think the proof is in the pudding, because we made, in the first years it was 400, 500 bottles, but the quality was so fantastic and it became so popular that virtually all we've planted in the last 5 or 6 years has been Sauvignon Blanc and Viognier. So, the outcomes that we're getting in terms of freshness and aromas are just outstanding. And, currently our Petit Geste blend, that's the name, which is on sale in the United States, is a 2016 version. I mean, it's the 2016 wine, which we have just a couple, 100 bottles left or something. I tasted it recently, and it's gone toward elegance, which is really astonishing. So it's subtle, it's clean. There's a freshness still, but it's gone toward really beautiful, supple richness. So it's really exciting. I hope, we always put our focus on the red wines, because that's what Naji and I gravitate to as people who enjoy wine. But that being said, we needed to double back and increase our production, because it's just been, summer in Lebanon is very long and beautiful, and people want to drink white wines, including us. So I'm a convert.
Yeah, I think white wines have taken a lot of people by surprise.
Michael, if I can just add very little things. What's interesting about our white is the acidity it's almost always a 3.9 acidity, total acidity, and the pH between 3.1 and 3.2. For a very luscious and full-bodied white, it's unbelievable. And it's because of the climate. I mean, our summer temperatures rarely exceed 27 degrees Celsius. Rarely. You know, last summer we were in Piemonte, Barolo, Jill and I, for a couple of weeks, and it was in the 40s. We don't see these temperatures. It's rarely above 30 in Bhamdoun. In 20 years we're here, we've not seen temperatures above 30 degrees. That's,
Okay.
I think, the secret for the amazing white that we make, and red.
Can I ask, why did you concentrate on Viognier and Sauvignon Blanc? How did you come to that? I know that there was some very good examples in Lebanon, but you made a choice to plant. So
it's a little bit selfish. I had to put my foot down somewhere. So I did it with Cabernet Franc in our red blends, and with Sauvignon Blanc, which is the white that I really enjoy. And the Viognier was a suggestion as a blending grape, which I'm very happy we did, because I'm finding that it adds you know, a minerality and a different level to the Sauvignon, which we really enjoy. Typically the blend ends up being, you know, about 60%, 40%, or 70-30. So it's more based in Sauvignon, but the Viognier adds a very beautiful undertone.
I see. Well, it's a different aromatic, so it probably adds it really fast. Well, it's been a while since I've had the wine, but it struck me as having a unique aromatic quality to it. So
true.
But
yeah.
Jill, don't you, darling, believe it's all like neither Jill nor I are winemakers, and only recently we've had winemaker helping us, and it's all been, you know, driven by what Jill loves and Naji. So we're not experts. We're just lucky to be in a terroir where in the same village we have 300 meters of altitude. So when we planted the Cabernet Sauvignon, people told us it prefers cooler temperatures, so we put it on the northeast high vineyards. When we planted Syrah, we put it on the southwest low vineyards. I'd say it's a stroke of luck, Jill, don't you?
Absolutely. But, you know, we're having fun too. So it's a lot of experimentation, but we've been steered in the right direction so far. Lots of luck.
Hey, Naji, I have another question. Who's helping make the wines now?
So Diana, who lives in Bhamdoun,
Yeah.
is making the wines.
Diana's still there. Okay.
Yeah, Diana's still here. Esperanza left. She was looking, you know, after the vineyards. She's gone. She's back to Spain, poor girl, because her husband couldn't find any job in Lebanon.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, and so, you know, no, definitely Diana's here, and Diana adds a beautiful touch to the wines. Absolutely.
Yes,
I mean, the first 4 years we had no winemaker, as you remember.
Yeah. Yeah, Diana's great. Please give her my love.
May we've been able to, Diana takes very good care, and we've been able to make all of our wines with only natural yeast since the beginning of her tenure with us. So that's been awesome.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'm a fan, as you know.
Who else is Diana working with right now? I mean, I think she was with Wardi for a while.
She's worked with Atibaya.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, Atibaya is the other winery that she spends most of her time with, and yeah, I don't know if she still works for Wardi, but maybe.
Yeah, well, they've had some changes, I guess.
Yeah.
Naj, it's been a pleasure to be with you in the vineyards for a change.
I know. Oh, it's so beautiful here. Everything is growing. Oops, sorry. Oh no, it's the cedar trees are growing. As you see, we replanted cedars. My olive trees, my figs. You know, the vineyard looks fascinating. You've seen the amount of flora that we have here. It's unbelievable. The wild flowers. So beautiful. I put it on Instagram all the time because I'm so proud of how much of a symbiotic relationship we have between our flora and our vineyards. We don't use, as you know, any pesticides. So or herbicides. So the wine we make is what the terroir produces, as simple as that. And really happy we can share some of that with you today, hoping that you can come and visit us and stay with us. We have plenty of space. We make good food and good wine.
Mike, I have a quick question for you. Any update on the movie?
Mark is the person to ask. The two Marks who are co-hosting
Yes.
this.
Hello, two Marks. Any update on the movie?
Yeah, we have some big updates coming in June, I think, I hope. But we're currently wrapping up the visual effects of graphics and color correction and music, which is all coming together right now. Matt Hartman, editor on the film, is actually with us today, which has been pretty cool. I think this is his first exposure with a Lebanese wine producer, and there'll be many more. We hope to do this every Thursday up until we get our final marketing push to release the film, hoping for the summer. But more updates to come every week, for sure.
Great. Look forward to it.
Can I actually follow up with a quick question for Joe and Naji? Nice to meet everybody. I'm the editor on the film, and like Mark said, it's been a pleasure to sort of get to know Lebanon and that part of the world and wine in a way that I never have. So I'm excited to share that with the world, because I think that everyone will be just as excited as I was to learn the history of that place and the magic of it all. And also wanted to point out that I'm also from Minnesota, Jill, so kind of a funny connection there.
Ooh,
I grew up
awesome.
But my question was, have you guys considered, or would you maybe be open to Mark and I to tell your story as its own short documentary? Because I think that your story sticks out amongst the others, that it's very historical and very powerful, and also the fact that it's still happening very much now and still organically changing so much. I think that'd be a cool story to tell.
Well, obviously, we'd love to have you come and visit us and get to know the story from the inside. And so maybe we can make that a goal.
Absolutely.
There's so much to talk about, and it's impossible to do it in a short time.
Yeah, no, that sounds lovely.
Yeah, we would definitely be open for something like that. It's something
Cool.
we should discuss. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So anything else? It's getting pretty freezing for me down here.
Put on a sweater.
Yes,
I
have
do.
a
I
question.
have a sweater, but it's cold. It's like 8 degrees. They talk about global warming. It's not really happening here.
I have a question for Naji.
May I ask a question? And I don't know if this was answered earlier or if this applies, but would it be possible, or do you make a sauterne in your vineyard?
Look, we've never really tried. May can maybe help us and Michael talk about I do not believe we get winter early enough for us to make a decent sweet wine. Okay. Am I correct by saying this? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think you have the right microclimate for it.
Yeah.
You need a lot more humidity.
Yeah.
Well, that's for botrytis. I mean, you could do like
You could do a late harvest.
a fortified wine or late harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a choice. If you don't want to make a sweet wine, you don't make a sweet wine. It's simple.
But look, let me tell you something. The wines we're making, we have a very low yield, as you know, 24,000 bottles from 60 acres. That's 10 hectoliters per hectare. And we don't want to change that because of the quality. We believe it will change the quality. So I'm not able today to purchase land or rent land from locals at the same price that I was able to do it 20 years ago when we started. So an acre would cost a minimum of $1 million. So for us to venture out into Sauterne we should maybe try on a small plot and see what kind of, just people have asked us to plant Pinot, for example. But again, it's not northwest United States weather. It's not Bourgogne weather, if I would like to experiment with some Canenau, for example. I think it will do very well here.
Yeah.
And are there no other producers of at least, vineyards in Lebanon who would sell whatever type of grapes they have that would work?
Oh, look, so you're recommending maybe we purchase grapes. We don't do that. We don't do that. We make wine from the grapes from this village, and we don't really want to go into a commercial venture of buying grapes. We've been offered grapes by other areas. On the contrary, what we've done, actually, we've helped incubate other wineries, like one right next door to us, very nice wine called Iris Domain, fantastic small winery. We would like to encourage and empower people to produce their own grapes and their own wine, make their own wine. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. This is Rosie.
Hello, Rosie.
Hello, Naji. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I actually could go with
some
Jamal.
questions. Come on.
What have I said? I've said a few things.
Naji, I think a limited edition fortified wine, very limited edition fortified wine on the local market might actually capture the imagination of the Lebanese consumer. I think that's my 5 cents.
I agree.
You have good spirit. You have good base spirit there. So.
Look, André Cointreau, when we first started, so he's the founder of Cordon Bleu and one of the owners of Séguin Moreau, and obviously Rémi Martin. And he came and spent time with us when we first started. And I said, look, I love cognac. I'm a cigar smoker. I love cognac. And he said, Naji, when you have wine like this, don't even go towards the cognac or the fortified wine category. It'll be a shame. Our grapes are amazing. You should really come one day and look at them. There's the size of chickpeas. Okay, they've been stressed all summer and produce amazing fruit, dense fruit that's just great for making wine, and that's what we're doing. If Michael tells me, make me 1 barrel, I will do it Kermel Schwerbach, Michael. Okay?
So Naji, you mentioned Canenau, so it was a Grenache type thing. So are you planting? Or are you just something you're thinking about? Because I think the high altitude with the limestone soils be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we still have some land we haven't planted, maybe about 5 acres, and I'm thinking about it. I do not want to rush because, as you know, viticulture is a long-term commitment. In our case, we have to age our wines 9 years minimum before we sell it. So we're learning. Canenau is certainly one. I'm looking at local varieties even, but it's gonna take some time. We're not going to rush into anything. So, as they say here, you plant your vineyard for your children and your olive trees for your grandchildren. So I don't have any grandchildren, but I should start planting olive trees. Maybe my son will get excited.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah. Look, Lebanon is really unique. Lebanon has 24 climatic zones. France has 26. The small country of 10,000 square kilometers can be the host of so many different grape varieties. Okay. And only time will tell what kind of a grape variety works in Bhamdoun. We learned this the hard way because when we first started, we had the consultant from Napa and a consultant from Bordeaux, and they both gave us the wrong advice. So the old people, Joseph was one and Brahim was the other one, gave us the right advice. We learned this the hard way. It's only now that we're finding this out. So, I hope the market doesn't push us in this direction, but Jill and I are steadfast in our mission, I believe.
And we thank you for that.
Naji, if you don't mind, I think we're about to wrap up. If you don't mind, I'm going to take the stage for one last time and just say, from a personal point of view, if you told me 19 years ago that 19 years hence, I'd be hosting a web chat, which I don't think we knew what they were then, about your winery and how pivotal and what an important part of the Lebanese wine narrative it had become. I think I'd have been quite surprised. But the energy that you and Jill have brought to bear in Bhamdoun, and the steadfastness and the diligence which you've applied yourself to really create a beautiful little boutique producer that is a shining star in the Lebanese constellation. I'll shut up soon. I just think it's fabulous, and I think you have one of the great stories, not just in Lebanon, but in the world of wine, in terms of using wine as a metaphor for peace and reconciliation. So I want to thank you both for coming today and taking part in this, and long may your success continue.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for being our advocate for all these years.
Michael, I want to say thank you to you too, because you put Lebanon on the map also. So we're doing our job. It's out of our love for our land and our village, and I could not have done it without this beautiful Minnesotan woman that's sitting in Minnesota right now while I suffer with my dogs, donkeys, sheep, goats, chicken. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Naji and Jill.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow, Naji.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.